he was working on what he and others called programming methodology. There was a working group, 2.3, called programming methodology that started around 1969, 1970. But in the 80s and 90s, he described his work as work on mathematical methodology. He was trying to find a methodology to conduct mathematics. And in the 80s and 90s, he was projecting what he had learned as a programmer, his knowledge about programming methodology, onto mathematical methodology. And I will cite him in a moment. Let's first have a look at 1953, when he started programming. Already in 1953, he distinguished between what a computer can do, or what a program can do, and how the task is implemented. He made this distinction very clear. He made analogies, marbles in a bag, a teacher holding chalk and a sponge. He used those analogies to describe the functionality of a computer store, because he was working with engineers, with physicists, his close friends also in Amsterdam, but he was making these analogies to then solve the programming problems that he and his group was facing. Nevertheless, in 1953 he was very much, if you contrast this with later years, he was very much still reasoning machines specifically. So he was making engineering trade-offs. So in his own words, he compared a cycle program with a stretched program. A stretched program is longer but will execute faster than a cycle program which is shorter. And he said that depending on the kind of machine you have, you will prefer a cycle program, or if you have another machine, you will prefer a stretched program. So he was not, in retrospect you can say he was not yet completely abstracting away from the machine, which he would do as his career progressed, which many people would, by the way, do in the 50s and 60s. Okay, let's go to 1960. He did not like to make case distinctions. For example, a number is even or a number is odd, or a number is prime or is composite. He did not like to make case distinctions if you could avoid them. So here's an example in the algo programming language. Procedures cannot call procedures versus procedures can call procedures. Many programmers were making this distinction. They even wanted to enforce this syntactically on the programmer, and he said, no, we're just going to treat a procedure in its full generality, which means it can call another procedure or not. It may call itself or not. We're just going to deal with that in its full generality. This story is, I already elaborated on this story in my previous work. I'm just giving it you here in one slide. 1961, he was already clearly reflecting on the kind of work he was doing, and he was making an analogy between mathematics and programs. And he said, it is impossible to prove a mathematical theorem completely, because when one thinks that one has done so, a mathematician has done so, one still has the duty to prove that the first proof was flawless, and so on ad infinitum. One can never guarantee that a mathematical proof is correct. The best one can say is, I have not discovered any mistakes. Nevertheless, Dijkstra then provided two reasons why mathematical theorems do have a high degree of plausibility. These were two sociological reasons, which I present on the next slide, but it is interesting, maybe for some of us, future work on research, to compare and contrast his two sociological reasons with those presented in this 1972 paper by Danilo, Lipton, and Perlis, where they are essentially countering Dijkstra's whole agenda of wanting to formally verify programs. Because these three authors also give sociological reasons, but to actually say the opposite of what Dijkstra is saying. Nevertheless, Dijkstra says then, so many mathematicians have, each in their own way, derived theorems that there is a non-negligible probability that they do indeed follow from the axioms. And I'm just drawing a picture here. He's saying so many mathematicians have proved the same theorem, the rectangle, so one can be confident that even though maybe, I don't know, a small percentage of these people will make mistakes, okay, it's not flawless, nevertheless many people have done so, so we can feel confident that the theorem is in fact a theorem. A second reason, which is the more important one for my talk, is the pretended conclusions are subject to conditions so orderly that the user's task of showing that he has applied the theorem correctly is not too cumbersome. And I draw it as follows. In the lower left-hand figure, you have a theorem, the rectangle, which only holds if several conditions have to be met, with many case distinctions. And he did not like that. Obviously, you have a more elegant theorem if you have just one or two case distinctions that hold. For example, you distinguish if the number is prime, we do this. If it's composite, we do that. And that's much better than having to have a theorem with 5 or 7 distinctions. This is something you see throughout his whole career, going for generality. That means a minimum number of case distinctions. And now he's going to, this is still in 61, so far he has been reasoning as a mathematician, talking about mathematical theorems. Now he's going to use the analogy and reason about programs by means of the analogy. And he says, just like the mathematician, the programmer is in exactly the same position, for he too cannot prove the absolute correctness of his programs. The mathematician has theorems, the programmer has subroutines, and the programming language designer has programming language concepts. And so my drawing, I emphasize this is my drawing, just to convey it graphically. He says the usefulness of a subroutine increases as the chance decreases that it will be used incorrectly. So preferably in a program, you have a subroutine, the rectangle, that is only called from, say, 2 different contexts, as opposed to 7 or 10 or different contexts. So that's the analogy he's making, and I'm not going to go further on this because this is 1961. I just want to show how he was reasoning from mathematics to programming. I'm going to talk in a moment about 1981, where he's reasoning from programming to mathematics. That means I'm going to talk now about the lower half of this drawing. 1981, mathematical methodology. He says there is more than superficial analogy between computer programs and mathematical proofs. Let's exploit the analogy. My effort to transfer what programming methodology has taught us to mathematical methodology in general. Considered as a formula, a program is usually several orders of magnitude longer than the formulae to the manipulation of which traditional mathematical practice is geared. The computer scientist has a greater awareness than the average mathematician of the economies involved. So he's essentially saying that he and others, computer scientists, have something to offer to what he calls mathematical methodology, because of the economies involved. In the 50s and 60s, he dealt with programs, and he had in some way had to deal with the economies involved of, say, a computer, where even if he abstracted, this was something he had to deal with. So I'm now going to focus on his EWD documents 776, written in 1981. And these are going to be mathematical details here, but if you can grasp the general idea, that's fine enough. I mean, that's good enough. I'm drawing this picture. He would not have liked it that I would visualize his work. But here's an example of a horizontal and a vertical axis, and the dots well, they denote a function. For example, from a x on the horizontal axis to f of x on the vertical axis. And in this particular document, he was dealing with a mathematical function f, which is an ascending sequence of natural numbers. And I think most of us would write it as follows. For any I and j larger than I, f of j is larger or equal to f of I. So we have an ascending function. I'm just giving you the notation he used. The universal quantification is with an A and an underscore, but for the rest it's very similar. And also the sequence is unbounded. So those white dots that I drew there, they go up. Okay? They always go up eventually. So for any y, I would write it as follows. For any y, there is an x, such that f of x is strictly larger than y. In his notation, he used, for the universal and existential quantification, he used that notation. And what I'm going to show you is that he now wants to prove a theorem, a mathematical theorem, about a function that he calls Lambo, which he got from the literature. This is not his own example. A function Lambo. And he wants to prove something about that function Lambo, which I have to define in a moment. But he's going to do that by writing a program that computes the function Lambo, and then he's going to massage that program. His own words, massage. He's going to transform that program, and eventually, so he's programming, he's eventually going to have a program that is symmetric and that actually conveys the theorem he wants to prove. That's how he's conducting mathematics. Now, Lambo of the given function f is a sequence of natural numbers. Let's call it g. G is Lambo of f, means that for any y, g of y is equal to x, where x stands for the minimum value such that f of x is larger than y. So, in this particular example, I took an x and we have f of x up there. Now, if you take a particular y on the vertical axis, let's say you take this one, then g of y is going to be some x, the smallest one you can find from left to right, the smallest one you can find, such that f of x is larger than y. So in this example, g of y is going to be this x. It's the first one from left to right, such that when you apply f to x, it is strictly larger. That's a definition he got from the literature, and he wants to prove that the function Lambo is its own inverse. He wants to prove that. So, okay, so for those who like all the details, then I'm giving all the details, but it's not necessary. The idea is that he's massaging programs, and I have yet to give the first program, but I'm coming there. So our requirements is that for any I, this is just a formalization of what I just said. For any I strictly smaller than x, f of I is going to be at most y, but then the first x you encounter from left to right that is just large enough, f of x is larger than y. It's just a formalization of it's the formal definition of this Lambo case study. Now, to compute G, so to compute Lambo of f, he says, let's design a program with an invariant relation P. Now, an invariant relation, this is terminology he used in the 60s and 70s. And I don't have time to explain all of this, but he has an invariant P which will always hold throughout the execution of his program. He's going to reason formally about his program, which I present now. I'll present it. Oh my God! I'll present it on the next slide again. This is his simple guarded command program, which computes G given that we already know what f is. So you initialize x and y to 0, and then you're going to compute g. And now I'm just going to have to go a bit faster, which means if you want to see the details, you can watch the video. But the essential thing is that this yellow program is a non-terminating program where the values become arbitrarily large. X and y become as large as you like. He's reasoning about a program that can run on an ideal machine. This is so that means infinite memory. It's something he did not do in the practical programming context of the 50s, for example. I'm giving you again these definitions. And then he reasons about the sub-programs of the yellow program at the top. He reasons about whether it terminates or not. He does the same for another sub-program, program 3. And finally, he notes that his initial program 1 fails to terminate, which is good. It goes on forever, but he calls it fails to terminate. So eventually he comes up with a program 4 where he has now moved the g of y into a comment, because this is a comment. Everything between brackets is a comment. So now this program is not really doing anything useful. It's just incrementing x and y. And he's now assuming that not only f is given, but g is given as well. But he wants to prove something about g. So for a practical programmer, this is all maybe a bit strange. And he explains why this program fails to terminate. And then he adds new invariance q. He explains why this invariant has to hold. He proves it by contradiction. I'm not going to go into that now. And then eventually, so he's massaging his program from program 1 to program, I believe, 4 to program 5. This is program 5. He massages it again. He gets program 6 because he notes that he has added this here, and he explains why you can do that. But by doing that, he gets a symmetric program. So I'm going to highlight that with the colors. Symmetry in symmetry in the pairs xf on the one hand and yg on the other. Therefore, and this is his notation again, this is if and only if. G is the Lambo of f, if and only if f is the Lambo of g, and that's what he wanted to prove. And he's done that by transforming step by step a program, and at the top you have his conclusion. So he reflects in his own words. He says, I am not quite clear about the moral of the above. We have proved theorems about the function Lambo. I've given you one theorem, but he proved other theorems as well about the function Lambo, by first deriving a program for it, and then massaging the program. For me, this is a novel application of semantics preserving program transformations. On the other hand, we know that a chain of program transformations is so close to a mechanically verifiable proof that it seems vain to hope to prove any deep theorem this way. Thank you.
Questions?
So I saw your chart progresses on the x-axis over to the right and then back again. Does that represent Dijkstra's increasing relevance and loss of relevance at the end or something? Is there any meaning to your curve?
This one?
Yes.
No.
One axis is the other axis is...
Here, this is the second time that you interpret my drawings in a way I never intended. So, this is just to have a drawing. It could have been a straight line, but I've considered that more boring. It's just that at some point, no, I don't want to say good or bad at all.
Also not more productive and less productive.
No. He had a different research agenda, And he also clearly says that. So here he clearly says he's not a programmer anymore. And many colleagues had their feelings about that, but he clearly had a different research agenda.
There was a question.
It was very difficult to follow the end of your paper. But you said that there is a similarity between the theory of proof and the theory of programming. In the middle of your paper, you said there is a similarity or... But the theory of proof is based on Hilbert mathematics. The theory of programming is based on the theory of algorithms. I cannot understand any connection. Because
So I just have two remarks. I didn't use the word theory. I think I didn't use it at all. But if I did, I shouldn't have used the word theory. But I think most important is I'm presenting Dijkstra's views here. That's the way he thought about. He made the analogy. So we can debate offline whether he was right or not. But as a historian, I'm just explaining what he did. Is that a satisfying answer?
I'll ask a similar sort of time and generality question to what I did of Steph. You talk about this transition from intuition and reasoning, from analogy and metaphor to formalism. Do you think that's representative in this field? Or is this a curious case? Are there colleagues and students who are moving in the same direction? What do you think of that?
Well, he was, I think as a historian I'm allowed to say he was controversial, and this was one of the reasons. And he had followers, and I'm not going to exclude the possibility that people are still doing this, with maybe some success. But in general, I think most people are not doing this. I'm talking about software engineering. Okay? But he also said he was not working in software engineering anymore. So we have to be, he said he was not doing that anymore.
I think it's important to point out what was very visible in the Times was his emphasis on stepwise refinement in the development process, treated formally, because he would have been surrounded by a large number of individuals who would either believe in some kind of theorem-proving attitude, producing correct programs, or in fact just in the general benefits of applying logic to contemporary programming, something that Mark here has written quite a lot about the role of the logic paradigm, which he's bought into so much that ultimately he wanted to rewrite all the logical notation himself, to the great amusement of people versed in classical logic, not least yourself, since I noticed you are using classical notation. That's some of the videos that appears in some of his books. So I think the thing has to be embedded a little bit, sometimes for this part of his life, into the sort of surrounding peer group, not least his chums.
You're absolutely right. That has to be done. So I've been zooming in just on him, but I have to put it more into context and explain what his fellow logicians, how they thought about his work and what they were doing.
But he does stick very closely, you see, to formal theories of program development. So programming as a process is a unique feature of a lot of his work, whereas the others took a more static view, not quite as personal or creative. And that's why the guided commands are so interesting. They're not designed to be executed, they're designed to be helpful in thinking.
But so I agree, but in industry there are many guarded command languages used.
Sure. So, but I'm just talking about the content of the 76 book.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, let's thank our